Hey everyone, welcome. This is Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios on this Wednesday, February 12th. We're live on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM, 987radio.com, and we're live on all of our social media pages. Hope you guys had a great day, man. It's cold in Lubbock tonight. It's been cold all day long, and I think somebody just told me it was like 28 degrees out there. So it cooled back down. We had 80-something degree weather last week. We're kind of hemorrhaging our way out of winter is what we're doing in Lubbock. So it's cold out there. If you guys are out there driving around, be careful. It's probably getting slick, and there's a little moisture out there on the roads. And so you guys be careful out there and take care of yourselves. Hey, we're going to continue talking about immunity and what we could do to stay healthy right now. Seems like it's one of those deals that are, it's hitting us hard this year. All of these colds and flus and sicknesses and everything that everybody's dealing with it's really kind of overwhelming to a lot of people. And it's great. It's great to have these opportunities to talk about them, because I can tell you one thing. This is what I've come to learn over the 54 years of my life. I've come to learn this. Whatever you're doing is either moving you towards health or it's moving you away from health. There's no in between. There's no middle ground to that. And we just blow it off. A lot of times we just blow it off. We don't pay attention to it. It doesn't matter. We're too busy. We're too busy doing something else. We're too busy with our lives. We're too busy with our families. We're too busy with work, whatever our thing is, and we just don't think about it. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to listen to it. And we make choices. And then those choices lead to results. And those results are either going to move us towards health or going to move us away from health. And when they move you away from health, eventually it's going to get your attention. It's going to make something's going to happen to you. And it might be the flu right now. Could be. But something's going to happen to you, and it's going to make you say to yourself, man, I sure wish I would have, I wish I would have made better choices, right? I wish I would have made better choices. And so the more I study, what did I hear Dr. McGilchrist? I was listening to Dr. McGilchrist and Dr. Peterson this week, and he said something. He said there's a difference between being ignorant and not knowing. And he said ignorance is what you have before you know. And then not knowing is what you have after you know. And I don't think he said it exactly that way, but he was basically saying this, that ignorance, if I don't know, if I've never even heard of it before, I never studied it, or I'm just completely ignorant. Like I'm ignorant in a lot of things. You could go through lots of lists of things that I'm ignorant about. One of them is engines in cars. I don't know anything about engines in cars, really. I never have been a car guy, and I never have studied engines, and I'm really ignorant when it comes to engines. You start talking about engines, it'd take maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then you'd lose me. But not knowing is what happens when you start studying, and the more you study, the more you realize how little you actually know. And I was so glad that those guys said that, because I've started worrying about that a little bit here in the last year or two, because it just seems like I don't know anything. And it seems like the further I get, even though you get these downloads of wisdom like they got on Sunday when we were talking about taking health to church, you get these downloads of wisdom that happen to you. But man, you start looking into things, and it's like, golly, there's more. There's like a whole nother level of stuff that I don't even understand. And so it's kind of inspiring. One thing's for sure is that there's not 2 days the same. Like every day's a new day. And so that's the fun part of it. That's the thing that we look forward to. And we know from a neurotransmitter standpoint, we talked about this last night, if we can just set that boundary just a little bit out in front of us, will keep that dopamine going, which will keep that adrenaline going, and it'll keep our brain working. And so not knowing is wanting, it kind of makes you search, right? So you guys know I read the book Inoculated last week, and then there was 2 other books that I hadn't read that I wanted to read that were in the line of that whole thing, written by the same guy, Ken Heckenlively. And because the first book I had read back in 2020-ish, 2021, called Plague, and that's kind of Judy Mikovits's first book. And that was the one that really explained a lot of things to me that I'd been missing out. And then there was another one called Plague of Corruption, and then this one here, it's called Ending Plague. And so it's got her and Frank Rossetti and Ken Heckenlively wrote the book, but they're telling stories and stuff. So I've been reading a lot of this, and it's really awesome because when you get to a certain point, this stuff really starts meshing together. And like I was reading this on one of these pages, and I was like, that's my dad right there. Like, that's what happened to him. And I'll kind of explain it. I'll get into the book, just parts of the book. I don't want to get into I'm not trying to get everybody riled up about things like the Inoculated book did. But I do think there's some things that you can learn. And that it was really cool to be able to learn it. And so you get a little bit deeper insight into things. Then you have conversations with patients during the day. And when you have these conversations with your patients during the day, then you start to see, oh, I see this, like it's more clear what's going on. And one of the things that goes on is we've got these we talk about physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress in chiropractic. Well, we've got some of these chemical stresses in our environment. And, like last week we talked about with the vaccines and the thimerosal, just as an example, right? Well, aluminum is in there now, and that's another problem. And then glyphosate, Roundup, that we have out here, that's all over West Texas, and it's all over the world, and that causes a problem. And so we've got all these toxins, but some of them are viruses as well. And then some of these viruses will actually kick our immune system into high gear. And that's what I really kind of want to talk about tonight. I want to go back and really see if I can verbalize it in a way that that helps us understand it. And I want to use part of the book, and I want to kind of show some graphs and some pictures and things like that. But to try to get an understanding. I was thinking about it right before the show started. I finished up with patients. I ran back to the back to wash my hands, and I was just thinking about. I was thinking about this slide, and when we talk, let me just kind of change gears a little bit, okay? Or say it this way: when we talk about being healthy and doing healthy things, if you don't understand what it is you're winning with, if you don't really understand what the point of being healthy is, it's really hard to get yourself to want to do that. Like when I say take your fish oil, like balance your 6-3 ratio, take your vitamin D, do those things that we showed last night. Here's your turmeric if you need it, right? Make sure you're getting your N-acetylcysteine to get your glutathione, to do all this sort of thing. There needs to be an enemy. There needs to be a challenger. The Eagles needed the Chiefs. The Chiefs didn't realize what they were getting themselves into. The Eagles are the ones that needed the Chiefs. The Eagles are the one that needed the Chiefs to be up on the pedestal so that the Eagles could focus, so that they could drive hard enough, so that they could practice, so that they could study, so that they could prepare, they could go into the weight room, they could do all the things that it took to drive hard enough and hard enough and hard enough and hard enough to do it. It's really easy if you've got the Chiefs out there in front of you and the Chiefs are 2-time back-to-back Super Bowl champs, and they're out there in front of you, and you're the underdog, and you need that challenge to go get it. It's really easy for us to function that way because it's built into us. It's that mentality that's deeply built deep into the way that we function. So we need that challenge of what's out there in front of us. And I think a lot of times health is so taken for granted that it's not challenging. It's like, I went and got a cup of coffee this morning at the Summer Moon coffee shop. Super cute coffee shop here in Lubbock. They've got two of them. They're kind of bougie looking, and they put them in some fancy little areas, and it's like I was on my way to go get a Starbucks and Summer Moon's across the street, and Leslie said something earlier this week that every time we go down here, there's a bunch of cars in front of Summer Moon, and I was like, all right, well, let's just try it today. And so we went in there, and they had one of those cases where they have all the cinnamon rolls and the pastries and all that stuff in the case right there next to the cash register where you order. And I looked over there, and man, they had one of the best looking cinnamon rolls I've seen in a long time. Like it was a good sized cinnamon roll. It was perfectly cooked. It had perfect amounts of cinnamon. You could just see it on there. It's like, man, that looks beautiful. And then the way they'd sprinkled all of the icing over the top of that cinnamon roll, it is like it was a really attractive, good-looking cinnamon roll. If you guys have ever, if all you cinnamon roll people out there that like cinnamon rolls, then you would have loved that look. I mean, you would have loved it, right? And I looked at that thing and I said, "Oh my gosh, look at that, Les." I was like, "Look at that cinnamon roll out there. Isn't that beautiful?" And did I order the cinnamon roll and eat the cinnamon roll? No. Are you kidding me? Not a chance. There's not a chance I'm going to eat that poison and order that cinnamon roll. No, maybe never again. I can't see it right now. As long as I stay focused, as long as I maintain my fixation, like we talked about on Monday, as long as my maturity level stays high, as long as I stay focused on what it is I'm trying to accomplish in life, I can't ever imagine eating another cinnamon roll, even as much as I love them. And as much as I've eaten hundreds of them in my lifetime, I love cinnamon rolls. But I need that challenge. I need that driving force that's going to tell me, dude, are you kidding me? No. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. And what is that driving force? What is it that gets your attention? What is the thing in your environment that gets your attention that now makes studying health worth it? Because if you don't have that thing, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about. If there's even anybody out there listening to me, I know that you know what I'm talking about because you question sometimes, what are we even doing? Like, why are we doing this? What difference does it make that we do this? And then Jason's like the weird wellness guy. He's like, all right, well, he's the weird chiropractor guy, and he's the weird wellness guy. And okay, well, we're going to have dinner tonight, and it's like, and Jason's going to be here, so let's pretend like we don't eat cinnamon rolls or whatever. He's just put the Cokes up for tonight or whatever, or he's going to be here, and then it's going to be embarrassing or whatever if I'm going to have all this stuff, right? And so we go through all that. Which I'm not that guy. I don't freaking care what you eat. But you can eat what you want to eat. I'm not going to eat it. But you can eat what you want to eat. But I can tell you that it's going to catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you at some point. And when it does, it may drop the hammer on you. And it may create all kinds of chaos in your life when you just ignore it and let it go. And I just don't want us to do that. I don't want us to do that. And I promise you that is true. That it's a true statement. And you might be like, dude, shut up. Like, whatever. I'm not listening to you. Like, I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to eat a pizza. Like, come on, man. You're just an idiot. And I'm like, fair enough. If that's the way you feel, fair enough. But I can promise you, you do that enough days in a row, you're going to head right into just a solid brick wall. And you're going to run into that brick wall, and it's going to hit you so hard that you're not going to even know. And hopefully you don't die. That's the number one thing, is hopefully you don't die. And you're like, what do you mean die? I mean, like my best friend die in the middle of a football game. Die. That's the kind of die that I'm talking about. At 50 years old, just go in at halftime and then just die on the bathroom floor at the football stadium at halftime. Just bam, dead. It's like, that's the kind of die I'm talking about, right? But if you would have talked to him 1 week beforehand, the week before he died on the bathroom floor, if you would have talked to him and you'd have said, hey, Mick, dude, man, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this stuff? What is going on with you, brother? Like, what is it that is not getting your attention that is going to save your life? And I didn't have that conversation with him. I missed it. And it's like, you got to see his wife at the funeral, and you got to see his 3 kids at the funeral, and you got to stand there next to his daughter, and then everybody says, this was your dad's best friend when we were in high school. Like, this was 18 and 20 together. 13 and 20 together. I got a picture of it that I was just looking at yesterday. Right? It's like, dang it. Well, let's don't get that far down the road. Let's just stop for just a second and say, hey, hang on just a second. Okay. Okay. You got my attention now that you're talking about a dead person on a bathroom floor at a football stadium. Okay, now you got my attention. Now, what are you talking about? You mean I could die from the choices I'm making? I'm telling you, yes, you could die from the choices you're making. Or you could create disease from the choices you're making. Or you could create cancer from the choices you're making. I could do the same thing. We together are in this thing together, right? So one of the things that we showed this week is we showed this poster about immune response. And if you guys listen to me on the radio, you can go to Walk by Faith, the Facebook page, and you can check this out. Or you can come to the Rock Health and Wellness Center Facebook page, and you can check it out. But this is a big deal. It's a way bigger deal than I've made of it over the last several years. It's a way bigger deal than I've explained to my patients. And it really is. It's something we should talk about. It's something that we should understand and we should know. And it's the immune response, and it's the initial response and the secondary response. That innate immunity and adapted immunity. The first thing that our body's going to see, and then what's going to happen secondary to the first thing, right? And we want a strong. What it is desired is we want a strong initial response. We want to be on the ready. We want to come out in the first quarter and drive right down their throats and score a touchdown. And that's what we want to do. We want to have a lead like right off the bat. Like, we don't want to wait around and then have a really slow first half and then try to catch up. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do what that's not good for us. We want to, right off the bat, we want to get after it. Okay? So we want to have our system prepared to respond to our environment. And I know it's probably confusing. You may be saying, what is he talking about? I don't even understand exactly what he's talking about. But what I'm saying is that if we will do all the things that it takes to be healthy, if we will exercise, eat right, get adjusted, get our sleep, take our supplements, watch our food, control our insulin, All those things that we've been talking about ad nauseum for the last year and a half. The 300 shows of the same conversation. We're coming at this as many different ways as we can possibly come at it. Is we want to have initial quick response, and then we want to have a weaker secondary response. I don't want to call the SWAT team. I just want to be able to handle it. I want the police officers to handle it quickly, and then let's be done with it. But if I lock myself in the building and then all of a sudden they got to call the SWAT team out, it's not going to end well for me, right? It's like every time they say, well, they had to call the SWAT team out, it's like, dude, that's not a good thing. When they bring the big guns and then they bring that big machine thing with that battering ram on the front of it, and they drive that through the front door of your house, and it's like, dude, that's not good. You don't want to go that far. That's a bad outcome for us from a health and wellness standpoint. We want strong initial immunity. And another way that's more scientific of talking about this, and I'm not really going to get into the science of it tonight, but of a Th1 and a Th2 response. It's kind of how we see the environment. And it has to do with cytokines, and so, but when we get a Th2 response, it's a severe kind of response. We really don't want a Th2 response very often, and we want to be able to turn that immunity down. Okay, and I want to read you something out of the book, and this comes from Frank Schellenberger. He's an MD. He's a clinical guy. He's not a scientist. He's a clinical guy. And he sees patients, and he's got lots of experience, okay? And this comes out of, this is Ending Plague, page 263. And he said this, and I'm going to read two different paragraphs right here just to kind of see if I can, and they're talking about all kinds of stuff now, so don't get all riled up. But it said, this is what Dr. Schellenberger said. He said, I started to realize that what's going on with these diseases, whether it's AIDS or chronic hepatitis or chronic Epstein-Barr, it's not the infection agent itself that's the problem. The problem is that the particular person is not responding to the agent with an immune system in a proper manner. And he uses ozone therapy. And ozone therapy is one way we can make you respond in a proper manner. You've got all these people walking around with many with these Th1 to Th2 shifts. They're vulnerable. Along comes a virus to which these people, and then they may never recover. They don't have the ability to control the virus. That's my theory. So I'm going along and I'm treating people for viruses, and every single one of them gets better. I don't care what the virus is. Sometimes it's hantavirus or West Nile virus or influenza. Most of the time, I don't know what it is. I just know it's clinical viral infection. Every single one of them gets better almost instantaneously when I apply ozone. But what ozone is helping get out of this Th1 to Th2 shift. And I'm not talking about ozone. I'm just reading the book, right? This is not a show tonight on ozone. It says, try to limit exposures to pathogens, but also try to make sure you have a healthy immune system to battle any microbes to which you might be exposed. As Schellenberger further explains, you do not want a Th1 to Th2 shift ever. You want to maintain balance, homeostasis. That may be one reason why anti-parasitic drugs are beneficial in COVID-19, Ebola, and HIV/AIDS. And then I'll just keep reading right there. I remember Dr. Klinghardt telling me at a conference in Germany in April 1st of 2017, and this is Judy Mikovits talking, that he'd never seen a retrovirus-associated disease where there was not a comorbidity of parasitic infection. Frank Rossetti and I always say pathogens rarely travel alone, citing the 2009 paper, War and Peace Among Microbes by the Margolis Lab. Schallenberger is not a molecular biologist, but as a clinician, he's trained to see patterns in patients with chronic illness. Schallenberger states, there is always a trigger. I'm just a clinician. I'm a doctor. I don't know much about viruses, but I know what makes people sick and well. And I can tell you, it's darned unusual to see a patient come in with a chronic illness and can't tell me, this all started with a particular series of events 20 years ago. And when I read that, I was like, that's my dad. That's the article that I read. The event was some kind of trauma to the body. It might have been a blood transfusion. It might have been a bad viral infection. They might have hit their head or had some concussion. Or they could have been big time into stress. All of these things can cause a Th1 to Th2 shift. That's what my dad said. Is like he couldn't ever understand exactly. He couldn't understand exactly when his ankylosing spondylitis started, but he remembers getting the flu. He remembers getting really sick from the flu, and then all of a sudden, he's got this autoimmune disease, and he never understood why, and that's why. And we got to take a break. We get back from the break. I'm gonna see if I can dive into this a little bit further to make sense of what's going on in our world. You guys stick around. We'll be right back. That's what Dr. Schellenberger is talking about right there. He says there's some kind of trauma to the body. It might have been a blood transfusion. It might have been a bad viral infection. They may have hit their head and had some concussion, or they could have been big time into stress. And that's what we talked about last night, right? Remember, psychological stress increases the chances for colds. All these things can cause a Th1 to Th2 shift. So you've got an autoimmune disease, and then all of a sudden you get a virus, and your body, your immune system, is already pre-exposed to a Th2 shift, because every time you inflame, every time you get the inflammation up, that's what a vaccine is. A vaccine is a Th2 response. I had to text one of my chiropractic buddies because when I first got out of school, and I've actually got a PowerPoint somewhere that I built based on this guy. Steve Marini is his name. He's a chiropractor. But my buddy that's here in town, he was speaking at a conference in New Mexico this guy was speaking right in front of him, and this had to have been like somewhere around 2000, 2001-ish, maybe even 1999 time frame. And he explained the difference between a Th1 response and a Th2 response, and a Th1 to Th2 shift. And he was talking about when you get the flu through your mouth or your nose or your eyes, right? When you get a flu shot, you get it stuck in your arm. That's not the same immune response. And I'm not getting into vaccines tonight. I'm simply using that as an example between the difference between the way your body actually sees the virus and the way you actually get the virus. Now, if you had a nasal spray that had the flu virus in it, then that makes more sense because that actually would be a Th1 response-ish way. Hang on, let me get us back online. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. We are live on this Wednesday, February 12th, and we are doing our best to try to talk about the different kind of immune responses and what we want and what we don't want. And what I was talking about during the break with the people online was this. You have your body set up in the wrong immune response because of the way that you're treating your body. You've got this constant Th2 response. You've got this Th1 to Th2 shift. You've got this quick, you've got this quick initial response that attacks certain things, that has certain chemicals and certain cytokines, and that's related with it. And then you have this second response that's responsible for the big guns and different things. You just don't need the second one. You don't want that Th2 response. You want to have it's a process. You do if you stay sick long enough and you're healthy. Let's say you're doing really well with your health and you get exposed to something, and then now the sickness lasts for 2 or 3 days. You start with a fever, you start to cough, whatever, that thing, and then 2 or 3 days later, you're going to get that Th2 response. You're going to get a Th1 response, then you're going to get the Th2 response. They're going to bring in the big guns, and then now we're going to really get rid of it. Okay? Then you'll actually have memory T cells that will remember that virus for the rest of your life, and then next time you see it, it'll be way quicker response before that your body is able to send those antibodies out to, and you'll be able to kill it. Okay? But what happens to us that we don't realize is that we are constantly setting ourselves up for this overreaction of our immune system. And that's really what is the problem. The problem is not the virus by itself. Flu virus by itself is not the problem. And I'll tell you why. Because last night we went over the mechanisms of Tamiflu. Remember when we went over what happens with Tamiflu? Tamiflu locks up basically an infected cell and doesn't allow the replication of the virus to release from the cell. If I was to use this microphone that I've got with this little round thing as the cell, and that virus comes in, it attaches to the receptors on the outside of the cell. There's this process that takes place, and now the virus gets sucked inside the cell, and now it starts to hijack the components of the cell, and it replicates itself. It replicates, and now it's ready to send itself out throughout your entire body and try to infect all the rest of those cells. Well, what Tamiflu does is it basically just, once the virus gets inside the cell, at least this is what they think happens, they don't know for sure, but this is what they think happens, is that it locks it up inside that cell, and then now it can't get out. Okay? That's a response that's going on. And we talked about this mechanism of things that happens, right? So you've got flu virus inside the cell. It's not really causing massive problems inside your body. It's not really, you're coughing a little bit, you got a fever. That initial response, the macrophages and the neutrophils, that initial response, that innate response has kicked in. It's released some of those cytokines. You don't feel too good, but you're not into Hashimoto's disease, right? You're not into Graves' disease. You're not into lupus all of a sudden. You're not going into some sort of ALS or ankylosing spondylitis or MS, right? You're just feeling bad for a couple of days. But now if you let that thing get loose and that virus starts running around your body, it starts getting into your DNA and starts changing your proteins and starts doing all kinds of stuff, then what's going to happen is your immune system is going to respond. And that's what I was taught a long time ago. I was taught, and it got explained to me that there's no such thing as the body mistakenly attacking itself. And what I was reading through, when you let some virologists talk to you, it's like it makes a whole lot more sense. The body doesn't mistakenly attack itself. If that's the case, then innate intelligence is not running the system, because the Spirit of God inside of our body is not going to make a mistake. That's the fundamental thing. That is the fundamental thing that sets the two models that we have in our country apart. The, the, the medical allopathic model is going to, they do not believe in this innate intelligence thing that your body is perfect 100% of the time, always. It's 100% perfect 100% of the time. That innate intelligence is that. You know, you get in a conversation with your medical doctor about innate intelligence, they'll look at you like you're a fool, right? Most of the time. But that's the first thing we learn in chiropractic school on day one. That's the fundamental difference. It's like, look, you have a perfection inside your body. And if we can keep that perfection in an environment that's congruent with health, it will continue to express health, right? So I learned from day one, nope, there's this autoimmunity. I got an autoimmune disease. My body mistakenly attacks itself. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true at all. I think your body is attacking something. I think your body is attacking something that you can't see and we can't see. That's one of the things that happened with Judy Mikovits is she studied chronic fatigue syndrome, and she found this mouse retrovirus when she was studying the chronic fatigue syndrome patients. In 67% of the patients that had chronic fatigue syndrome, she found it. And another group came after her and found it in 85% of the patients. Then the powers that be decided, no, we can't do that. I think you made a mistake. I think that's not true. We're going to do another study. And here's what they did. They took a group of people who had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, but were not in any kind of flare-up. They were not fatigued. They were not psychologically stressed. They were not in the middle of their flare-up at all. And then they checked their blood, and they said, it's not in here. It's only 6% of the people we found has this XMRV. It's not 67%. It's not even here. You just made that up. And Judy was in what she said. It makes total sense to me. Is this: the virus moves around, the virus stays dormant, and then when something hits you, it lets loose. And when it lets loose, your immune system starts stalking it. And your immune system overreaction is what we see. It's like, there's your autoimmune disease. If that virus lands in your thyroid and your immune system attacks your thyroid, then all of a sudden you think, well, I've got some sort of thyroid problem. I've got hypothyroidism or whatever it is, Hashimoto's, right? That now, because I have an autoimmune disease, it's attacking my thyroid. That my body is making a mistake and it's attacking my thyroid. No, it's not. I don't believe your body's making a mistake. I believe your body has been like a heat-seeking missile. It's been searching. It's like, whoa, there's that virus right there. I saw it. I'm going to go get it. And when it goes and gets it, it just happens to be sitting on your thyroid gland. Then the same thing happened with my dad. My dad had this virus or something inside of his body. And then all of a sudden he got this fever. He got the flu, or we got something else. And now what did it do? It stirred up his immune system, and it turned it on, and it left it on. And I think in the next paragraph, let me see if it's what they say. So Schellenberger also noted that some of his patients claimed a vaccine was. Now listen, I'm not. This is not a vaccine show, so I'm using it as an example for us. But he says Schallenberger also noted that some of his patients claimed a vaccine was a trigger for their chronic condition, and he began to think more deeply about the question. And he says this: I never really liked vaccines. Something about them I just didn't like. At that point, I asked myself, what's the definition of a successful vaccine? It's one that induces the formation of antibodies. Now, what did I just say just a second ago? If you have an initial innate response and it lasts for 3 or 4 days, then you'll have the secondary adapted response and you'll have antibodies towards the virus that you are dealing with, right? It happens in the secondary response. And here's what he says right here. I've never really liked vaccines. Something about them I just didn't like. At that point, I asked myself, what's the definition of a successful vaccine? It's one that induces the formation of antibodies. That's not the same as lifelong immunity. Where do these antibodies come from? They come from the Th2 system. And while the Th2 system is busy making all the antibodies, it's also secreting cytokines that shift you from the Th1 state to the Th2 state. That's exactly what happens every time you get a vaccine. It shifts you from Th1 to Th2. And I thought, we're taking kids and adults and we're shooting them up with more and more vaccines, and you have to wonder how many of these kids are growing up with normally functioning Th1 to Th2 balance. How many are going to develop all manner of disease and chronic conditions as a result of the shift? But there are going to be some pretty strong kids whom it won't matter, but they're going to be a subset of the population for which it's going to be disastrous. Okay, don't get fussy about the disease part. I mean the vaccine part, okay? This show is not about the vaccines. The show, what I read that for, this is a medical doctor that's got credentials, that has seen patients for a long time, that's done a lot of research. This guy, this is his quote right there. It's taking, we go get the flu shot, we end up with the flu. We go with the flu shot, we end up in the hospital. Why? Because we're overreacting with our secondary Th2 response. We don't want that to happen. We do not want an overreactive Th2 response, and we do not want a Th1 to Th2 shift. We do not want that. And I know you may be, I may have lost you by now, and you may be thinking to yourself, I don't even know what that means. Like, I can't follow what he's saying. What I'm saying is this. We don't know what we're going to be dealing with on a daily basis. We had a conversation in the office today, and I asked one of my patients, how are your parents? And she said, well, my dad's sick. My mom was sick last week, and then my dad's sick. And he said, she said, you know, that it's that thing that's going around. And I just stopped for a second while I was working on her. I just didn't say any words, and I just thought about it for a second. And I was like, what does that mean? It's going around. Where's it going? Like, the virus, you know, there's a bad virus going around out there. Like, it's going around, or it's just out there. It's just always out there. It's out there in July. It's out there in the middle of the summer. Does the virus just disappear? Like, it just shows up in the winter and then it just goes away in the summer? Have you ever known anybody to get the flu in July? Yes. It's just out there. We're the ones that are having the problem. We can handle it in July. We don't do very good with it in February. Right? We can handle it in August. We don't do very good. No one says, when August comes around, no one says that we're in flu season in July and August. What they say is we're in flu season in January and February. Why? Because we're not getting our bodies prepared to face what it is that we're going to have to face. And when our bodies go through this ebb and flow of the seasons, when we go through the ebb and flow of the seasons and we start eating more processed foods, we start eating more sugar, we increase our glucose, and we decrease our immune system. Like, Like, you see what I mean? It's like now, it's like, okay, now we are not prepared to face what's in front of us. We didn't, the flu's not going around. The flu's around. We're going around. And then the other thing is, did did the did the wife give it to the husband, or did the husband take it from the wife? Did you say, somebody at work gave me the flu? That's what we say, right? But I think we should reform our declaration. I don't think we should say it like that. I think we should say, I took the flu from someone at work. No one wants to admit that. Right? We don't want to admit that. We don't want to say, well, crap. These decisions that I've been making, these choices that I've been making, just ran my immune system down to the point where I just took the flu from someone at work. It's way easier to blame the person at work. Some people will actually get mad at the person. Somebody will get mad and they'll be like, so-and-so gave me the flu. I was perfectly fine, and then they gave me the flu. I'll just present for your consideration. You weren't perfectly fine. You couldn't handle the flu when it hit you in the face. Why? That's the question. That's the thing. Now, let's take that and let's take it to all of these other things. Let's use my dad as an example. Like, what happened to my dad? I can guarantee you, after reading that paragraph right there, I can guarantee you what happened to my dad. He had a TH1 to TH2 shift that stayed on. It shifted. There wasn't any. You guys ever had a gas fireplace, and you're trying to start a fire, and so you put all the wood in there in your gas fireplace, and then you turn the gas on just a little bit, and you take your lighter and you light the flame, and then you turn the gas on, and you just heat it, like you make the flames big enough to start your fire, and then you just leave it on for a few minutes until your fire gets going. And then once your fire gets going, you just go back over there and turn the gas off again. And because you don't need it on anymore because the flame is already going, right? Well, just imagine that in our immune systems, we turn the gas on and we turn it on higher than it needs to be on, and we just leave it on the whole time. It just burns up all of our wood. It's not even, you don't even get to enjoy it's just going. That's what an overreactive Th2 response is. And the cytokines and the inflammation that goes on with that is whacked out inside the body. I finally figured it out. Ankylosing spondylitis. That's what happened to my dad. I'm convinced that's what's happened. It's like I told you guys last week, I should have had him taking bottles of fish oil. It should have been anti-inflammatory insanity at my house. Should have been fish oil and turmeric. Should have been like crazy at my house to try to get that system. We got to turn that thing off. What do you mean, Jason? What are you talking about tonight? Right? What are you saying when you say I got to turn that thing off? Remember the board I showed you yesterday? Remember this board right here that I showed you yesterday? This interleukin-1 beta that activates these T and B lymphocytes and it increases inflammation. Remember this whole thing that I walked through, like causing pneumonia and lung damage, increased C-reactive protein, this whole process right here. Well, we got this inflazome's inhibitor. We got to have something. We got to have this interferon over here, this type 1 interferon that shuts this thing down. We got to have a knob over there on the gas to the fireplace that's like turn that dude down a little bit. We don't need that much immune response. It's too much. What is it going to do? It's going to cause us to have all kinds of problems. It's going to cause all kinds of problems. And it's like, okay, what do I do? like, how do I get this to calm down, right? That's one of the things that I circled, and I put this big old giant red arrow on. I circled that when I was breaking all this down in my living room. It's like DHA suppresses interleukin 1 beta. There you go. DHA suppresses that overreactive immune system. That's what I'm talking about. It's like, it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen to you. And you don't want it to overreact, because when it overreacts, you'll end up with some sort of autoimmune disease. And who knows how many lists of things they went through. ALS. My grandmother had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. They had in the book, ALS is one of the things. MS is one of the things that they went through the whole, like, they went through all these lists of things that is this overreactive immune response. So how do I keep that from happening? Okay, in my world, like, I'm not getting any of that. Okay, this is not an anti-vaccine thing. In my world, a flu shot is not even something that I would even think about and consider. No, what's a flu shot going to do? It's going to increase my Th2 response. It's going to heighten up my immune system. It's like, no. What else is going to? Inflammation is just setting me up. It's just setting me up for having this overreactive response. I don't need all this. I need a calm, peaceful inside self. I need some John Kabat-Zinn like stuff, right? I need some internal meditation. Calm it down. Calm it down. What we don't need to flare it up. What happens with insulin? What happens with insulin when we eat refined carbohydrates? What do we talk about with refined carbohydrates and insulin? Right? Spikes. We get insulin spikes. We don't want insulin spikes. We don't want these giant insulin up, glucose up, insulin up, down, insulin up. We don't want that kind of lifestyle. That's not what we want inside of our body. That's not health. What we want, if we can get all of our stuff together, is we just want a balanced, easygoing flow of insulin. Just want it to just easy, just go through there. Just why? Because we don't want all this blood sugar spiking. We just want a nice, steady flow. We want a calmness inside of our body. We don't want an overactivity. We don't want an overactivity of our right hemisphere. Right? We got our brain. We got our right side. We got our left side. We've got our up and to the right. We don't want an overactivity of the right hemisphere. What is that going to give us? That's going to give us anxiety. It's going to give us stress response, fight or flight stress response, increased cortisol, decreased stomach acid, decreased immune system. That's the last thing I said at the end of the show last night. Decreased stress causes decreased immune system. Why does it do that? Because if it's a threat, we might live for 90 more seconds. And our brain is going to say, okay, look here. Do I think that the flu virus is going to kill me in the next 90 seconds? Nope, it's not. I'm not going to worry about it then. I'm only going to worry about what's going to kill me in the next 90 seconds. That's the only thing I'm going to worry about. And I'm going to put all my resources into that. I'm not going to put my resources into what might kill me 10 days from now. Like, I'm not going to make it 10 days. This tiger is going to eat me in the next 90 seconds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my resources. Do I need to digest food? No, I don't need to digest anything. I'm not going to do any reproducing. I don't have to have any good posture. None of that stuff's going to happen, right? That's going to That's not what we're looking for. We don't want that to happen unless we're in a tiger fight. And then if you're in a tiger fight, you better be you better be running and fighting one or the other. I hope you have a weapon because the tigers are crazy, right? So, but that's another example. What about your thyroid hormone? Do you want like whacked out thyroid changes going up and down? How about stomach acid? Do you want whacked out stomach acid going up and down? No. What about, here's a great one. How about your hormones for all you ladies out there? Do you like it when all of a sudden your temperature goes from normal to it feels like you're at 200 degrees, and then in the next second you're dropping right back down and it feels like you're at 26 degrees, and then 5 minutes from now we're right back up to the top? No, that's not what we want. Nobody. The women don't want that and the men don't want that either. Neither one of us. What we want is a nice, steady pace. We want nice, steady immune system response. Let's jump on it when we need to, and let's get rid of it and turn it off, right? And we do that by being as healthy as possible all the time. We do that's why the fish oil matters. That's why the vitamin D matters. That's why the sleep matters. That's why the exercise matters, is because you just don't know what's around the corner. And if you just keep yourself ready, you're going to have a way better life. Hey, we've run out of time. Thanks for listening to all that. Hope you guys have a great night. We'll be back tomorrow night at 6.